What is Naruto FighterZ? The obvious answer is it's a fighting game in the style of Dragon Ball FighterZ developed by ArcSystemWorks, but instead of Dragon Ball, it's Naruto. But is it really that simple? What mechanics would be different? I mean, Naruto and Sasuke super dashing at each other doesn't really make a lot of sense. What does the roster look like? Does it have a Naruto Shippuden focus or a Boruto focus? What stages are you gonna play in? My name is Globku, and this is what a Naruto FighterZ would look like. The first big question for Naruto FighterZ is what kind of fighting game is it? Is it a 1v1 fighting game? Is it a tag game? And if it's a tag game, is it a 2v2, a 3v3? Who knows, maybe even a 4v4. The fact that in the show ninjas go on missions as a team and teamwork is such a big part of the narrative naturally makes Naruto FighterZ a tag game. But what is the team size? Thanks to the legacy of the Storm games, we frequently think of Naruto as a 3-on-3 game. However, usually ninjas run in teams of 4. It starts with 3 Genin plus a Jonin and then later revolves into 4 equal ninjas taking on missions together. But a 4v4 game might be a bit too much for a tag game, especially when you're making something that has to be beginner friendly so people that aren't naturally fighting game players can pick it up and just easily play it. So I think Naruto FighterZ would end up being a 3v3 game with a twist, and the twist would be a mentor buff. So you would pick 3 characters plus a mentor before you head into battle. Other games that have done similar things recently are Marvel vs. Capcom Infinite, where it's a 2v2 game but each player can also choose an Infinity Stone that gives them different powers depending on which stone they picked. Or even Power Rangers Battle for the Grid, where you pick 3 characters plus a Megazord. The Megazord almost acts like a comeback mechanic. As you take damage, the Zord meter gets higher, and depending on how many bars you have, the Zords do different things. They can assist you in battle, they can push the opponent back, putting them in a knockdown, and I really like this mechanic for a Naruto fighter. So, in Naruto FighterZ, you would pick 3 characters plus a mentor who could have a similar system. Someone that you can charge throughout the battle, especially as you take damage, that would later come in with their specific assists. Imagine someone picking Kakashi as their mentor and then being able to just activate Kamui and wipe an opponent out of existence, or maybe an unblockable snapback situation. This would also give ArcSys the chance of adding mentors who aren't necessarily playable characters, therefore like artificially increasing the roster. Though someone in my Twitch chat actually gave me the idea of having the tailed beasts instead of the Zords, and each of the tailed beasts would also have their own unique attacks as well, and I really like that idea too. This honestly seems like a really big comeback mechanic already, so with this, Naruto FighterZ wouldn't really need anything like a Sparking Blast. Now that we have the format, let's talk mechanics. There are a lot of universal mechanics that make Dragon Ball FighterZ what it is. At a base level, it's a 4-button game with a light, medium, and heavy attack buttons, plus a special button that's usually dedicated to ki blasts. Every character also has access to an unblockable attack, which is the Dragon Rush, a universal overhead that can vanish to extend combos or get out of a tough situation, and of course, everyone also has the Super Dash, except you, Master Roshi. Sorry. Not to mention the defensive mechanics of reflecting, guard canceling, and so on. A lot of these mechanics don't make sense for a Naruto game, but there are a lot of others that would fit perfectly. First of all, I think keeping the 4-button layout with light, medium, and heavy attacks plus a button for specials would definitely benefit Naruto FighterZ. It's an easy to learn system and a lot of other ArcSys games follow this template to a degree. However, because in general Naruto characters don't fly, big combos with Super Dash extensions wouldn't really happen. In fact, I would like to see this Naruto fighting game with much shorter combos. Not too different from Grand Blue Fantasy or maybe even the new Guilty Gear. Bigger combos are usually very situational, whether it's in the corner or you caught a jump with an anti-air. Bigger combos would definitely exist, but for the most part, a few attacks into special or super would be your basic bread and butter. That said, Grand Blue and Guilty Gear are 1v1 fighting games, so these combos need to be higher damage, because in a tag game, you need to kill 3 characters. So while I want to see those big chunky damage combos, but in smaller combos compared to Dragon Ball FighterZ. The special button could also be generally reserved for projectiles. Some characters would have unique attacks that represent them in the show, but generally it would be your kunai or shuriken button. I think there would definitely be dedicated zoners in this game, but for the most part, this would be a poking tool to keep the opponent in check from a distance. And I don't think most characters would have flurries of projectiles like in Dragon Ball. You just throw a couple of kunai at a time, unless you are a dedicated zoner. Next, we are removing the Super Dash mechanic because it just doesn't make any sense for Naruto, but there are a few new systems that could replace it and make the game a lot of fun and very unique as well. I don't know if I'm being too ambitious with this mechanic, but I think wall fighting could be a new universal mechanic that hasn't really been seen in a lot of fighting games. ArcSys has done a lot with walls in the past. Grand Blue has Lancelot, who can jump off of walls and do certain actions. Chip in Guilty Gear can run up walls while comboing or use it as a means to escape the corner. With Naruto FighterZ, I'd like to see this taken a step further. Instead of characters just attaching themselves to a wall and then doing one action, maybe 2, I would like to see some more wall freedom. I would like to see characters being able to run up walls, to stop, to run back, just stay stuck to the wall if they want to. I would like to see two characters fighting in a wall or applying pressure, and all of their buttons would change while they are in the wall as well, giving characters a much more expanded moveset. And fights would definitely still take place mostly on the ground. I mean, when you land a combo and knock an opponent down, they wouldn't fall sideways into the wall, they would come back down to the ground like in any fighting game. But this could set up an opportunity for unique wall combos, for unique wall tech. It would completely change the dynamic of the corner, because now the player who is cornered doesn't just have to take the mix, they can also choose to try to escape through the wall. Naruto FighterZ would immediately distinguish itself from all other fighting games with this unique mechanic, and if anyone can pull it off, it's ArcSystemWorks. Wall fighting would be the mechanic to remember Naruto FighterZ for, just like the Super Dash was for Dragon Ball FighterZ. Almost every Naruto game I can remember has used the Substitution Jutsu as an in-game mechanic. However, games like the Storm series or even Clash of Ninja make substitutions way too frequent for a traditional fighting game. I would absolutely keep substitutions as a combo breaker mechanic, but I would make them a resource that's much rarer and harder to use. Probably something like a burst in Guilty Gear. You can break out of a combo with a burst, but you only get one, maybe two per match. In fact, when Chip bursts in Guilty Gear, he actually already does a substitution jutsu. I could also see something similar to a guard cancel in Dragon Ball FighterZ being replaced by a substitution jutsu, or even when you raw tag a character in, the other would just vanish with a sub. There are a lot of places where we can have substitutions in game, but as a combo breaker mechanic specifically, it needs to be at least as rare as a burst, and not something like Storm or the Clash of Ninja series where you can do it 10 times in a round. I can see a lot of the other systems being very similar to Dragon Ball FighterZ, so we don't really need to get into it. After all, if you change too much, it's not the game we're looking for anymore. So instead of meter, we'd have chakra, you'd see summoning jutsu, awakenings, and big attacks in super animations, and you'd be able to fight in a handful of stages, perhaps representing different villages or other iconic locations, like the Chunin Exams Final, the Sand Village, the Final Valley, Orochimaru's hideout, the Uchiha hideout, the Great Naruto Bridge, the Hidden Rain, and maybe some other random Konoha stage. FighterZ didn't have a ton of stages, and I think we all wanted more, but at the end of the day, stages don't really change the gameplay too much. They're a nice visual, but we're all just gonna pick whatever stage lags the game the least so we can all play online. Oh, this game better have rollback. I think that goes without saying. The stages aren't that big of a deal, but a roster can make or break a game, and coming up with a roster for Naruto FighterZ is not an easy task. Assuming they released the game with the same number of characters that FighterZ had, we're looking at 24 characters, and narrowing down Naruto to 24 characters, it's so hard. We're gonna start with a few questions about the general roster first. Do we have a Naruto Shippuden focus? Do we have a Boruto focus? 3 time skip even? Are we doing duplicate characters? How many Narutos and Sasukes are we gonna have? And I think the answer is the focus will be the transition once again from Naruto to Boruto. The intention there being trying to bring old Naruto fans into this new generation of Boruto, trying to boost the anime's popularity again. Just like Shinobi Striker tried to do. Maybe they didn't go hard enough on Boruto characters, but to be fair, most of Shinobi Striker's lifetime was pure filler, so there were a lot of characters that they can pull from. And as far as duplicate characters go, yes, absolutely. Some of the most popular DLC in FighterZ were other versions of Goku, so yes, you are definitely getting duplicates. Here's an example of a roster that I quickly made. A lot of these you could consider Naruto characters, and they would play as you've seen them in the show, but they're actually Boruto characters like Adult Naruto, Adult Sasuke, Kakashi, and Gaara. This way you have a bigger Boruto representation while keeping the characters that everyone loves in the roster. In addition to the Boruto team that would obviously be in the game, the villains Kawaki and Momoshiki could also make the launch roster. Everything else would be Naruto Shippuden. You got Naruto and Sasuke from the last battle, their most powerful forms in Shippuden. You've got Sakura, Shikamaru, Rock Lee, and Hinata as the characters we grew up with. And you have the legendary Sannin with Jiraiya, Tsunade, and Orochimaru. Moving on to the right side, we have some of the most iconic Shippuden villains with Madara, Kaguya, Kabuto, along with 3 Akatsuki members. And trust me, DLC for this game would be the easiest thing in the world. You still have the other Hokage, you still have more villains like Zabuza, you still have 10 other versions of Naruto and Sasuke you can sell. The hard part would be choosing which characters to cut. And I gave my Twitch stream a taste of that recently when I made them pick the characters that would make the launch roster for Naruto FighterZ. Seeing some fan favorites get cut, it really hurts, but some sacrifices have to be made. And we still haven't done the DLC, so if you want to be a part of that, make sure to follow me. The link to Twitch is down below. The roster they came up with is kind of similar to mine, but in my mind, this is what a Naruto FighterZ roster would look like. In my mind, this is what a Naruto FighterZ would look like. A 24 character roster, 3v3 fighting game, where on top of the 3 characters you could also pick an extra buff, whether that be a mentor or a tailed beast. Just imagine for a second season 2 of DLC comes out, and in addition to the tailed beast, they're also adding Susanoo. You can now pick different Susanoo as your extra buff. Easy money. Combos would be smaller than fighters, and combat would be a lot more grounded, with the added core system of wall fighting and substitution jutsu. Add a few stages and roll back netcode and you're basically printing money with this game. I know I would buy it, but what about you? What other mechanics would you like to see in a Naruto FighterZ? Let me know in the comments down below. And as always, thank you very much for watching. My name is Globku and I'll see you next time. Bye.